Hey everyone, welcome to our 2020 DnD Holiday Guide. This is just going to be a quick video on what you should get for those in your life who enjoy D&D. Maybe you have someone who's thinking about getting into D&D and you're not quite sure what to get them. I just want to start this video by saying what you really should do first is ask them what they might want. D&D can be a really personal experience where some people might like certain things over others, certain books, certain types of dice, that kind of thing. So it does spoil the surprise a little bit, but you are kind of better off sort of getting what you know they'll like, what you know they'll want to use and have, rather than you buying them something and maybe them looking to take it back. So with that being said, we'll just look at a couple books here that people will definitely need to play D&D. And the first one we have for that is the Player's Handbook. It has a lot in it. You could almost play the entire game of D&D with just this one book. It has everything in it for how to make characters, the basic rules, equipment, what to buy, there's all the spells and everything you need for your character in this one book. The only thing it doesn't have is the enemies that the players might face. And for that, you would need to get the Monster Manual, which is number 2 on the list here. So like I said, it has all of the monsters in it that players might fight, from ghosts, demon, dragons, vampires, all of that kind of stuff. And it has their sort of in-game statistics and a little bit of text about each of them, where they might come from, that kind of thing. So that those two, you could play D&D in its full entirety with just these 2 books. And they're considered core books for that reason. Now there is a third member of this core book family, and that's the Dungeon Master's Guide. Now this is for someone who's looking to run the game, not necessarily for someone who's looking to play. It has a lot of extra stuff in it that you don't really need as a player, such as magic items, extra rules, variants on rules, how to handle travel and traps and that kind of thing for your players. Out of these 3 books, the DM's Guide is probably the one that you need the least to play D&D. Like I said, you can play D&D in its entirety with these other 2 here. But these are the 3 books that make up the core rulebook set for D&D 5th edition. Actually, I didn't mention that before, and that's probably a good point. When someone's getting into D&D, you want to make sure that you're getting them the right edition. As you heard me say there, this is for D&D 5th edition, which is the most current edition. But there are a lot of books out there still from the older editions. And if you find that the 5th edition books are, out of the price range, maybe for your kid or something, you could start them off with a 3rd edition or 3.5, which is the most popular edition before 5th edition, because these 5th edition books can be pretty expensive. If we look here at just the Player's Handbook here, the price listed, as we can see here, is $50 US or $58 Canadian where I am, and I think that's actually gone up a bit in Canada as the dollar has shifted around. But you can see, like, per book, they're pretty expensive. So just moving on to some other books you might want to get them. We come to a book that's great for beginners or experienced players alike, and that is Tasha's Guide to Everything, or Cauldron of Everything, sorry. And the reason I say it's good for everyone is it's fairly new. I think it came out in October or November. And so there's a good chance that whoever you're buying for may not have it yet. And it has a lot of great options for players, and things for new races and class options and that. So even newer players, it's good to get this one. And it's the second book in sort of the series of everything, with the first one that came out being Xanathar's Guide to Everything. Similar to Tasha's, it has a lot of good options for characters and info for DMs alike. So it's definitely one that if they don't have, you definitely want to pick up for them. Now, out of all the D&D books, these ones we have here are probably the ones that will get the most use. That doesn't mean that they are the only books out there. And those other books might be ones that they could want to pick up as well. So moving on from books, you might want to get them, to sort of accessories and other things. We come to the things that are thankfully a little bit cheaper. So like I said, all you really need to play the game is the Player's Handbook and the Monster Manual, but you'll also need a set of dice. I keep my dice just in an old Crown Royal bag, but you can get them dice bags, dice sets. There's lots of different websites now that carry even custom dice and that kind of thing. I do think Amazon has like a pound of dice or something like that you can buy. Let's see if I can get these out without being too loud. Right, and so I just have a sort of a mishmash here. But you can see you can get dice sets. We're trying to organize these. Dice sets where the dice are kind of all matching. You can have matching color schemes and that. These red ones I have here. But really, to play the game, the colors and that don't matter very much. It's just a matter of personal preference and what the person you're buying for might like. So moving on from the dice, we come to something that's for kind of DMs and people looking to run games only, and that is the DM screen. There's been a few iterations. I have the first DM screen that Wizards put out here. And basically what it is you open it up, probably not going to fit on camera, and it's sort of a big square cutout that you would set up in front of yourself like this, so that the players in front of you here can't necessarily see what you're rolling and that. It also has helpful information about certain conditions and just helpful info on these inside panels here. Now, I would not recommend necessarily getting this first one because it was the first, and so the newer DM screens have more useful information on the inside, things that will come up more often that people have asked about. So just a couple of last things here to consider. One is the D&D starter set here, which is usually geared towards newer players, as it's kind of a watered down, easier version of D&D. D&D can be pretty heavy as far as rules are concerned, and so this gives a way for newer players to get into it without sort of having to get bogged down in all the rules and all the rolling and that. You can think of it more as a board game format than true D&D. And then on the other end of the spectrum, there are a lot of websites now where you can get custom miniatures. Now, what is a miniature? A miniature is like a little token, like you can think from a board game, that represents your character. Normally, people use whatever is around to kind of track where they are on the map. But there are these websites now where you can get custom ones, so you can find out about your significant other or your child's favorite character and get them a custom miniature 3D printed. I think they do offer them to be painted in that, or if whoever you're buying for is into it, they can paint it themselves. So hopefully this video helps you a little bit when buying D&D stuff, because there is a lot out there and it can be challenging at times. Also, be sure that you subscribe to the channel for all things RPG, and we'll see you next time.